And good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Chuck Jerome, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development here with BAASS Business Solution. And again, we thank you for taking the time for this next session, talking about the benefits of moving to the cloud. And why is there such a move to the cloud for data and applications? We've certainly seen an incredible rush to that over the last number of years. Uh, Maybe back in the beginning, there was delayed thought about doing that with many concerns, but many of those things seem to have been pushed aside, and certainly people are more comfortable with the idea of moving things to the cloud. And then you introduce something like COVID-19, and that has certainly made a tremendous difference in our need for the cloud and being and working in a remote workforce. So I just wanted to remind everybody that if you do have questions, certainly you can add them to your chat box in the bottom of the GoToMeeting session, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. So if I was to kind of sum everything up in one statement with respect to cloud computing and the benefits of doing so, and that's simply this, that you can then focus on what's most important, and that is your business itself. I always like to bring up the one of my favorite books, which was by Michael Gerber, and it's the E-Myth, and it's for entrepreneurs who are thinking of starting a business or trying to take their business to the next level. And in there, it talks about the three types of people that are involved in any organization, and that's a technician, a manager, and an entrepreneur. And as us starting a business, we have to be kind of all three of those until we grow and we can have additional people take on those roles. The other thing to that we need in any business is business development. It's marketing and sales. It's customer service and delivery, of course, the service and products that we have. But IT is one of those things, and unless it's something that we know and understand, we kind of feel vulnerable. It's nice then to simply outsource or move that aspect of our business into the hands of professionals so that they can manage that on our behalf. So I always like to start my presentations with some statistics, just to kind of bring some perspective or context around what we're talking about here. So in the year 2020, our current year, 83% of businesses were using cloud-based software to make their business easier and faster. Now, the surprising thing, 83%, you think maybe high or low, but this actually was a survey that was taken in February of 2020. And in that, we've since obviously had the COVID situation, and it certainly would be interesting to see what that value is today. If we look at the actual public cloud market, just to give you an idea of what is spent on cloud services, in 2018, it was $182 billion, increased by over 17% in 2019 to $214 billion. And again, I bring back the whole COVID situation with remote workforces, just how far has that spend actually increased over this current year. So before we jump into the benefits of cloud computing, what I wanted to cover off really is what is cloud computing. And the reason why I do this, and I'm sure most of you are very familiar with what it is, or you have an idea of what that is it's usually the question I ask when I go into a client is really, what does cloud computing mean to you? And every time I'm getting a different answer. But it's not that they're wrong or some people are wrong. Pretty much everyone is right, but it just shows you the variety of what cloud computing actually is. So just wanted to give us a kind of an introduction to that. So we'll start off with the fact that we have a service provider and they have a secured premises, and in that they are providing or have a lot of server hardware on that premise. And of course, to make that hardware operate, we need operating systems. And just to keep it simple for this discussion, we will refer to that as, say, as the Microsoft server operating system itself. And layered on top of that is managed services. And what I mean by managed services is the services that are required to take care of that server and its operating system. And this is often why we have, IT people in our organization, or we outsource that services for them to manage this for us. Okay. Over and above that, you may have a platform. And a platform really is a layer that allows you to develop applications. So you're either going to use the server services or a development platform, or you're actually utilizing a service provider's application and database. On top of all of that, of course, in every instance, is we have security, because that's first and foremost the most important thing to us as well, other than the fact that we need the applications to work. So security within the systems itself, the application, and the premises. We need to make sure this is like Fort Knox and nobody can get into it. And then, of course, the people that are there and involved in managing the cloud service provider, it's very important that those people are security cleared. And of course, after that, then it's the actual communication gateway. In other words, the pipeline into the building to allow the communications to happen. So every one of these layers is absolutely critical in a cloud service provider. When we look at the bottom 2 and/or 3 layers, we're talking about infrastructure as a service. So if somebody says, I'm using infrastructure through a cloud provider, that means we're simply utilizing the hardware and the operating systems, and we're managing it, and we're doing applications ourselves in there. We're taking care of everything else. Or we go through a third party and they're providing the additional managed services over and above the hardware and operating system layer. So we can outsource that to them, but that's infrastructure as a service. The other type of cloud is what we call platform as a service. So the platform, as I mentioned before, is really a development layer that allows you as an organization to build out your own custom applications. A perfect example of this is Salesforce as a company has force.com. In other words, the actual development platform that they use to develop Salesforce, they make available to their customers to build out their own applications, or to other independent software vendors to build out applications that will integrate with Salesforce. And then the last type of cloud service provider is a SaaS, or a software as a service. And this is where we're including all of that, plus a database and an actual application. And in this case, a great example of that is Sage Intacct. So the application that we're going to be talking more about this afternoon is Sage's financial management, native cloud, built for the internet access. That application provides all of those services: so application, database, a platform to be able to develop in, and of course all of the managed services hardware. You don't have to worry about anything at that point. So that gives us a sense of what cloud computing is actually all about. And looking at well-known cloud applications, these are ones that, of course, we're all familiar with and have been working with over the last 15 plus years. So we have banking, the very first one that we probably all became familiar with, the use of banking applications. And that, boy, hasn't that made our life a whole lot easier. And when you think about security, many people are worried about security and moving to the cloud, and yet the very first cloud application we used was that providing access into our personal financial information. So, there we trusted that enough to be able to do it. So we can certainly trust reputable cloud providers to manage our software services as well. And then we move into e-commerce, of course, the ability to purchase things off of Amazon, Wayfair, and Walmart. Boy, hasn't that been a wonderful thing to be able to do over the last 9 months. So save us from actually having to go out as often in the public with COVID. Social media, of course, I don't want to say anything more there, but those applications have been around for some time. And then, of course, entertainment apps like Netflix, Crave, and Amazon Prime. Again, those applications that probably have saved our sanity over the last 9 months during COVID. And then, of course, we look from a business perspective as well, the productivity apps that we use like Office 365 and the Google apps as well. So the drivers for many have been defined by Deloitte Insights. So if we take a look at a survey that was done last year by Deloitte, came out and they ranked basically the number 1 and number 2 reasons for companies to move to the cloud. The first one was security and data protection. So companies actually realizing they were more secure in the cloud than they were on premise. Then data modernization, which is really moving away from legacy apps into a sophisticated database like Microsoft SQL or Oracle, and supporting their data requirements. General cost and performance of IT operations, availability of cloud-based software, access to external data, and application performance, even thinking that the cloud would actually provide better performance. So these statistics are very interesting, but these are the key drivers that have moved most organizations over to the cloud itself. So let's talk about those top eight benefits of moving to the cloud. Number 1 is shared resources. So when we look at an infrastructure as a service provider that's either providing you with a server, an operating system, and or managed services, you're typically working in an environment where all that computing power is actually being shared. So therefore, you're only paying for what you use. So if you buy servers and put them into your office, you are paying for that 100%. When you're utilizing a cloud service provider, you're only using what you need at that point in time. The benefit of that too is it's scalable. So as your needs become more intense, so as you grow, and whether it's adding on another business, another location, additional people, these resources will scale with your business as well. And of course, just the energy savings alone from powering your own servers and then pushing that off to your service provider can also add to the cost savings that you have. It also, number 2, is allows you to streamline your IT costs. So IT resources, and I'm one of them, we're expensive. And we are highly educated people. We cost money, and we cost money to keep around because we continuously need to have training as IT and technology advances occur, all right? Or if you're not with internal resources, you're outsourcing that, and that is expensive. So the idea is by moving off that requirement for management of your IT to a cloud service provider, it allows you to reduce your overall costs in that area. And for your key people, you can repurpose them in your organization around a strategic IT resource, so they're not having to worry about the more mundane, say, day-to-day type responsibilities. And of course, it is budgetable because your fee for these types of services are on a monthly basis, a subscription type basis. So when you're going to look at cloud services and the cost of doing so, make sure you look at your total cost, because it goes much further than, hey, what's it cost for a server versus what's it cost for cloud services itself. So in there, you've got to look at all of your hardware, your platform, your networking, your operating costs, the costs to upgrade your systems, your data backups, disaster recovery, which you may or may not have right now. Okay, that's built in. Redundancy, so you keep your uptime, security.